Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the 2023 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference Competitive Advantage Talks presented by Kager, also known as Kraft Analytics Group. My name is Evan Lefkowitz. I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan. It's my pleasure to introduce our presentation, Analytics on Air, the MBA's first full-time analytics broadcaster. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Cory Jez, full-time on-air statistical analyst for the Portland Trail Blazers.
Morning. Mike, okay? Good? Everybody claps like that in their living rooms after I do my hits, too. I'm pretty sure. I've asked. That's what they said. So super excited to be here this morning. Thanks to Evan. Thanks to all the students. Everybody I've been sitting in here all morning watching presentations. It's been awesome. Everybody's been really well dressed, so I just want to talk about this right off the top. I think I'm the only one who's presented who has to wear a suit 82 nights a year, so I'm wearing a hoodie today. So that's the only difference. Do the boring stuff, get that out of the way. My name's Cory Jez. I've been working in sports data in different forms or fashions for about a decade now. I graduated undergrad 2011. Before I was doing sports data, I was a just generic analyst. I learned SQL, I learned Python, Tableau, all the hits that everybody in here is really familiar with. I was lucky enough to start with the Utah Jazz 2016 as their head of analytics for 4 seasons. And then I worked with Austin FC. I currently live in Austin, Texas. We'll talk about that and how that works with the broadcast. And I recently started a golf analytics company as well. So I work with, in the summer, when basketball's not going on, I work with some PGA Tour golfers, do some data work for them as well. So why do the Portland Trail Blazers have someone talking about analytics on their broadcast? Regional network, Trail Blazers own their own broadcast. Why are we doing that now? Well, everybody knows that analytics, or even though my hoodie says it, information is here to stay in sports. Every presenter you're seeing in the CA talks today, all the panels, this stuff's not going anywhere. Think about what Sloan's going to be like a decade from now. Right? It's only going to get bigger. It's only going to be a more integral part of the game. Well, I've had the privilege to work in a front office with coaching staffs, with salary cap specialists and general managers. It's time to give fans, and Portland really wanted to give fans the ability to interact with the same information that their teams are interacting with. That Chauncey Billups and Joe Cronin, the head coach and general manager of the Trailblazers, what are they looking at before they do every game? Let's give the same type of information to their fans. Anybody who's a big fan of any sports team knows you have an insatiable desire, certainly probably if you're in this room, to know what's going on behind the scenes. Why did we sign this guy? Why did we trade for this guy? Why are we running this type of pick and roll? Why are we defending the Sacramento Kings this way? So we wanted to give fans deserved being able to consume that type of information. Every team in the NBA has an analytics department. We think every broadcast team in the NBA should have expertise for this as well. And it wasn't always that great. There's lots of media members out there, generally speaking, all the ones I've ever interacted with, very smart, very curious about this type of stuff, but they don't all know this stuff in detail. I'm waiting for folks are getting to the punchline. Shout out to my Dallas Mavericks friends who I think are in here somewhere. Dwayne's a beat writer for the Mavericks. So we'll give Dwayne a little bit of leeway here. This was back in 2016. I'm sure he's a little more educated about this now. We could just go home to conference, halftime it'll work. So Nick Wright, I think he's spoken at this conference before. He did a really good job. This was recently after Chiefs, I believe it was Las Vegas Raiders game. So a little kind of a segment here that tees up, and I think parlays nicely into what we're doing as well.
8 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that, the NFL broadcast decided, man, there's so much controversy surrounding replay reviews, what is a catch, what isn't a catch. Let's have on standby for all these games a ref, a retired ref, so he can come in and be like, hey, this is a foul, this isn't a foul. He's not going to be a part of the broadcast play in, play out, but when we need an expert, let's go to him. I am calling on NFL broadcasts to do the same thing for, quote, analytics, unquote, because it is so maddening listening to every decision a coach makes that the broadcast crew disagrees with. There's some nerd with a calculator told him to do it. It's the old analytics. So I'm watching Monday Night Football, Chiefs-Raiders. The Raiders go for 2 to go up 1. And Joe and Troy, who are great, they're like, analytics. That was not analytics. The analytical models were actually very split on if that was even a good or a bad decision. That was Josh McDaniel flatly saying, I think we can get 2. And I don't think they trust their kicker. I want to try and take the lead.
This is a really good example of, obviously, the NFL. I don't think we can clone Mina Kimes to get her on every single NFL broadcast, although we probably should try to figure out a way to do that. Nick said this was this past season, so we were actually getting ready to start our season with our first analytics broadcast as well. But I think he puts it in a really great example. The NFL has so many very acute examples of this, right? Because you have 4th down, punt, go for it, whether or not to go for 2 or kick an extra point. Those examples are, get talked about to the ends of the earth. And in this case, Josh McDaniels got kind of roasted mainstream media Monday morning quarterback style because I believe they did not go on to win the game. But there are decisions like that happening at every touch point, at every timeout, every play call a coach makes, throughout a basketball game. So we're just trying to bring some of that information to the basketball game as well. So why are the Blazers doing this? Why is a regional team, doing this now? Couple of things that have kind of coalesced that have made this possible. First is that the Blazers own their content. So the RSN world is kind of crazy on its head right now, anybody who's been following that type of stuff. But the Portland Trail Blazers, along with their parent holding company, own their broadcast. So they have everybody I work with is a Blazers employee. We all talk to management. We all talk to ownership. We're all kind of on the same team from that standpoint. That ownership and management group is really willing to push the envelope. This whole project started way before I was involved. And it started with a group last spring surveying the landscape, saying, we need to do some more stuff. We need to do unique stuff for our fans. Portland fans, anybody who's been to a game there, been up the Pacific Northwest, aside from the Timbers, they're the only show in town. I mean, it is a Pacific Northwest, no team in Seattle right now. Very basketball crazy area fan base. And the regional network goes all the way from Northern California up to Alaska and into Idaho, Montana area. This is the team that the people watch. And so ownership and management really being willing, let's try something new. Let's push the envelope. Let's do something that nobody else is doing around the league. And I want to talk for a second about our technical staff, our broadcast staff, because I got very lucky. I walked into a room full of pros and a room full of veterans. And that's part of why that's made this possible. Kevin Calabro, Lamar Hurd, our play-by-play, and our analyst. Kevin Calabro was the voice of the Sonics back in the day. Legend. He's already in the Broadcasting Hall of Fame. They have some credentials there. Brooke Olzendam, she does studio for home games. Studio host for home games is also our sideline reporter. She was just named Oregon Sportscaster of the Year. Anybody like me who grew up watching SportsCenter every single night knows who Neil Everett is. Neil does our studio host for away games. Neil's an Oregonian by birth. So I stepped into a group that really knows what they're doing. And our technical staff behind the scenes as well, giving me access to graphics producers and advanced data feeds and some stuff that we will talk about. And so I just have to show up and do my job. And that's part of the reason we think it's done so well so far. So why me? I'm just a guy who writes SQL, Python. I worked in the front office. I just watch League Pass every night like everybody else who's a big hoops head. And it's very clear that I don't know the first thing about broadcasting. Don't try to wear a green shirt with a green screen behind you. But in all seriousness, to make this work, they wanted this to be genuine. We just looked at some media examples of, it is not, a journalist's job or the play-by-play in the sideline analyst's job to know this field. Their job is to call the game. They've already got, their head is already spinning a million miles an hour. We can't come and give them a master's course in analytics. And even if we did, it's not going to flow through as well. So what the management group kind of decided in this last offseason said, instead of taking a broadcaster and teaching them analytics, let's take an analytics person and teach them broadcasting. And it's slow going for me. Anybody who saw our early games, I've learned a little bit since then. But let's do it that way. Let's make it genuine. What is Coach Billups and his staff talking about at this timeout when we just saw 4 pick and rolls of the same set from De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis get 3 buckets? What are they adjusting? What are they looking at? And what are the numbers behind that? So how does it work? What do we do? What do I do on a typical game night? And again, the integration of this, and this is why I think a regional network as opposed to a national where you might come on, one time a week for a couple of hits or something like that, and there's probably a place for that too. But I'm doing every single game, touching the game and our fans in a lot of different ways. It's allowed me, what's been one of the coolest things doing this project with Portland, it's allowed me to really kind of engage and get to know our fan base in a way you didn't get to. Anybody who works or has worked at a basketball team, at a front office, especially, or in a coaching staff, it's not part of your job to talk to the fans. If anything, you're keeping that stuff under cloak and dagger a little bit. By doing this and having multiple touch points and by doing every single game throughout the season, we have vastly educated our fan base on this part of the game, and we've allowed them to kind of now understand, and we're talking about the same concepts every night, and I think that's a big part of why it's worked, if somebody would argue that it has. So I do pregame radio. I have a pregame, halftime, and postgame segment with our studio show. And we have 2 scripted in-game hits. Second time out of the first quarter, second time out of the third quarter, we'll come in right out of the timeout break and do a hit there. We'll show an example of one of those. And then the rest of the game, we're reading and reacting to it. I'll talk a little bit about my setup in a second and the things that I'm looking at, but it'll be 4, 5, 6 in-game hits. Damian Lillard goes off for 71 points. We have some content to talk about. Dame's been very generous to me, giving me lots of good material, so I'm very appreciative of Dame for that. We're also the first and only broadcast group to partner with Second Spectrum. Anybody who's been coming to this conference for a while knows who Second Spectrum is. They're the optical tracking provider, official optical tracking provider of the NBA, English Premier League, Major League Soccer, a number of leagues around the world. They've got 10 cameras in every arena. Those cameras are capturing the game using computer vision to turn those into dots 25 times a second. You got a dot coordinate for every player and the ball in 3 dimensions. They then turn that into data like pick and rolls, catch and shoot off dribble threes, how close is the contest on a three-pointer, all those types of things. We're the only broadcast team that has our own license to that, and we're the only broadcast team that has that live in-game. So I have a second access to Second Spectrum that I can look at live during a game and say, wow, the Blazers are only 6 of 20 from 3 tonight. We know they came into the night as the number 2 3-point shooting team in the league, but out of those 23s, 18 of them were unguarded catch-and-shoot threes, so we love the process that they have, and they're going to keep hunting those type of shots. Every fan has watched a game where they say, wow, we're getting great shots, and they're not going in. Or, wow, it feels like we cannot get a good look tonight. We can quantify that real time on the broadcast for our fans. This is my home setup. So I mentioned I live in Austin, Texas. We threw this together over the summer, and I'll do about 20 games either in Portland or on the road with the team. But this is my home setup. We do everything via Zoom. Got a couple of monitors. I watch the game on our broadcast. I also watch it on a delay, and I'm able to look at Second Spectrum. Also a great resource, Cleaning the Glass, which is publicly available. Most folks, I see some nods, will know about Ben Falk Cleaning the Glass in this audience. I'll do a couple examples here of a pregame hit, an in-game hit, and some of our graphics as well.
So I'm online last night because I don't have a live, and there's a Twitter guy named Joe Jackson, PDX, and it's not the stepping out Joe Jackson. Here's what he said. Analytics suggests that since Cory Jez at Jez Data joined the broadcast crew, the Blazers are winning at a 57-win pace. Hash Brown Analytics, Hash Brown Jez, Hash Brown Rip City. So you're pushing all the right buttons there. 57-win season, I think we'd take. Let's push the rewind button and go back to that Hart winner, and you've got some great information to share with us.
Thanks, Neil, and obviously I'm not going to be one to argue with those numbers, but we're gonna attempt here to put some numbers to the trust that Damian Lillard put in Josh Hart. And the way we're going to do that is something called QSP, Quantified Shot Probability. This is from our friends at Second Spectrum. It looks at 150 plus variables, including some you see here. Who's the shooter? Where are they taking it? Catch and shoot. How are they moving? How are the defenders closing out? All these things that were happening in that play last night. And that's going to give us an expected field goal percentage for any shot in the NBA, including the one last night. So as we roll this, Dame gets it and brings it up the floor. Play we've looked at a lot. When he passes, where he could have chosen to shoot right here, that would have been a 27% field goal. Josh Hart in the corner there, you see circling 33% field goal. Catch and shoot, less defender pressure, not moving as fast. So Dame's trust in Josh created a 6 percentage point benefit to the Blazers. So whether or not the shot had gone in, we can quantitatively say it was the right decision.
All right, Corey. Hart had the second highest field goal percentage shooting corner threes last season in the NBA. Does that figure into that number?
Absolutely, Neil. So these models are what we call nonlinear models. So all those things, who's taking it, where they're taking it, was it catch and shoot or off the dribble? Those variables are allowed to interact with each other to create the best possible prediction out of the model. And Josh Hart, by the way, so far with the Blazers, best three-point shooting in his career, 40% to date this season.
I think I'm the only person to ever say nonlinear models on an NBA broadcast. I'm going to put that on my resume. We'll leave out the fact that the Blazers are not going to have a 57-win season, and Josh Hart now plays for the New York Knicks. Those things are all beside the point. It was a great game winner early in the year. Here's an example of an in-game hit against the San Antonio Spurs, where I was actually in the arena with the team as well.
Blazers have the early lead here, 33-26, behind Damian Lillard leading the way with a dozen. Cory Jez joins us here on the broadcast. Cory, we were just talking about the depth of some of Dame's three-point shots. And I'm just curious, from 30 feet or better, what's the data showing you?
Yeah, Kevin, you know, the deep three has become a bigger part of the game, and lots of guys are now taking those threes, but you still have to be efficient with it for it to be a legitimate part of your offense and not just be kind of a trick shot. So we went back into the second spectrum repositories and looked at it all the way back to the start of the tracking data, 2013, 2014. Dame has taken the second most, 581 threes between 30 feet and half court, but he leads in field goal percentage, making 33% of those. And the guys he's ahead of, a few you've heard of, Young, Curry, Kyle Lowry, this guy LeBron James as well.
Yeah, that's special territory out there.
Yes, it is. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Cory joining us live here tonight, Lamar. It's something that's a treat for us to see Cory, because ordinarily he's in his studio, in his bunker, actually. His repository, to use his word, in nearby Austin, Texas. Here's Simons. He busts into the lane. Two-hand damage from Simons. Goodness.
That's also my biggest fear, is to have anybody who's watched a Blazers game, a Shaedon Sharpe dunk happen while I'm talking, because I will then just try to shut up and get out of Kevin's way. It's a good example of, you know, as we've gone through the season, Kevin and Lamar have a better understanding of what I'm talking about and doing as well, and we're able to talk through things at the time, especially you get into a late game situation. Maybe the play-by-play is not as, you know, interesting or relevant when the Blazers are up 20 with a few minutes to go in the game, so it's created a good opportunity to do that. We also have dedicated technical resources to this, to do custom graphics, because I can talk about this all day, but custom graphics that we can also then share on social, share in other ways, really to help our team out and help our fans out understand what we're trying to do. So here's a couple examples of those. This was a pregame hit. This was a Golden State Portland game. This was field goal attempt rate. The Golden State defense, believe it or not, allows the fewest rim attempts in the league. So Golden State's defense, Portland's offense. Portland got their 5th in the league, so that was a big focus point of us for the game. Both these teams, Golden State forced a lot of middies. Portland does not take mid-range jumpers. Portland has the best shot profile in the league. If you look at shot distribution, Golden State prevented a lot of threes as well. Portland took the 8th most threes in the league. So we'll do things like this in our pregame segments, especially halftime segments, to really help bring these numbers to the fans. And it creates kind of a tangible takeaway as well, so something we can share on social and things to help kind of drive the points home that we're wanting to make. 4 factors. Everybody knows the 4 factors. So we look at the 4 factors every post-game. I kind of call it our post-game analytics box score. And not only do we look at it, but we include the percentile of where that game would rank among all other games in the season. So this was a game we beat the Steph Curry-less Warriors early in the season, and you can see that while we kind of barely won the effective field goal percentage battle, we had a really tough turnover game. Actually, it was 5th percentile in the league. We turned the ball over 21% of the time. We don't want to expect that our fans know that a 21.2% turnover rate is pretty bad, something Portland's gotten a lot better at second half of the season. We don't want to expect our fans to know that the way that a scout or a coach would know, like, over 20 is really tough from a turnover rate. So where possible, we include these percentiles. They got to the free throw line at an astounding rate, 4 free throw attempts for every 10 field goal attempts in that game. These came through a little grainy as GIFs, but percentile sliders as well, a new graphic that we introduced this year. So we take any metric and look at the player. We'll be talking about this during a free throw or something like that, and overlay what that player's percentile is among their position group. And we talk, we've talked about it enough on air this year. So what's next? What's next for Portland? What's next for analytics and broadcasting? We've talked about maybe doing a full second stream, at some point this season, next season, getting in the studio, really allowing fans who want to engage the game, engage with it this way. We've already talked about this tracking data-enabled broadcast a little bit with the Second Spectrum. We're creating new visuals, new ways to actually show. Everyone's seen a shot chart. What about a block chart? Matisse Thybulle, who we just acquired at the trade deadline, notorious for blocking three-point shots, one of the only wings who can do that, things like that. More advanced metrics, more graphics on screen, more ways to drive this home, again, because ownership and management has given us the resources. It's not just me. I'm just out there kind of working on behalf of all the people behind the scenes and to put those advanced metrics, graphics on screen, having dedicated people to do that. So, and last thing. And if you're around tonight, we are playing the Atlanta Hawks at 7:30, and we are having a live analytics broadcast from Back Bay Social right around the corner. John Hollinger, who's in here somewhere, I think, and I will be kind of calling the game, and I'll be doing my broadcast from Back Bay Social as well. So it's a limited space, so please come early if you want to come, because I won't be able to help you out once I'm on the air. So thanks so much, and we'll take questions. Thank you.
How you doing? Just Julian from the door. Have you seen your fan base kind of interact with all the data, and do they have like a more friendly approach or relationship with analytics than opposed? And then also, are you guys like a model in any way for like maybe other teams adopting the same?
Sure. So, most of the ways that I interact with our fan base, Twitter, I'll do like a Reddit AMA, on behalf of the team, things like that. When I'm physically at the arena, able to interact with fans and stuff that way. One thing I've noticed, both our broadcast crew and looking at our fans when they tweet about the game, our fans will now be talking about like, I saw this number on cleaning the glass. Look at, we just got Matisse Thybulle. Look at his defensive on-off impact, not just his steals per game, things like that. So I think so. I don't have a perfect way to have the pulse of the fan base, but and as far as other teams, we'll see. We'll see what other teams decide to do. I think the regional, having a team do this, being able to engage with it, is a really great entry point to it, as opposed to like trying to force it on a national audience where you don't get the continuous touch points, the continuous context. Sure.
Hi, Rodney Green from Georgia State. You mentioned before that for your type of role, it's like giving an analytics professional a crash course in broadcasting. How important is it to also understand the analytics and how to run these models, but also have a firm understanding of the game? And with that understanding, how could that differentiate you from the next person trying to get that job or do what you do?
Yeah, having worked in a front office before and having worked in a team setting, even though I was an head of analytics at a team, you're talking to the coaches about their play sets. You get a crash course in basketball when you work for Quentin Snyder, in a real serious way. And so I think it was bringing not just the mathematical understanding, but the basketball context, because what we don't want to do is talk about numbers for numbers' sake, right? We don't want to, he's 100th percentile in this, the end. Right? What does that mean on the floor? What does that mean for the defensive rotations? What does that mean for the pick and roll coverage? So we always want to tie it back. And Lamar Hurd, our play-by-play analyst, he played college at Oregon State, and so he's lived that part of the game. So he and I will often kind of go back and forth. Where I'm seeing this number, Lamar. What do you think that means for the next defensive rotation? Things like that. So, sure.
Michael Shealy, Washington Capitals. It's awesome that you guys are implementing something like this where you're allowing your fans to have a better understanding of the game. But that's a very difficult thing to quantify, maybe from a revenue perspective. What was the justification that went into implementing something like this in your broadcast, and what tangible benefit you could get out of making this addition? Yeah,
I think more than the revenue perspective, those conversations certainly above my pay grade. It really was the ownership, all the way up to Jody Allen, of the team, wanting to give their fans more and give their fans the best experience. And some of that stuff is not my decision, but I think the logic goes basically you give people kind of a best new experience that they don't get at other teams, the revenue will follow. You know, I'm sure that's part of the justification. But yeah, I hear from fans sometimes, I was watching this other broadcast and, you know, kind of miss Kevin and Lamar. So, you know, it's really good to work with those guys. Sure. All right. Last one.
Hi, David Gold, Syracuse University. I'm curious what kind of future you'd see for sort of live analytics broadcasts, like hockey, basketball, two very fast-paced sports. How would you sort of balance that without sort of taking the experience away from the game and letting analytics fans still see what they want to see?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, something that, you know, I'm hoping we can work on. You've seen it in baseball, and to your point, baseball not as fast-paced with StatCast broadcasts that have become, you get like exit velo and like a main broadcast these days as well. I think the importance there is still going to be having a play-by-play professional. The one thing I do not want to do, because I don't think I'd be very good at it, is trying to do Kevin Calabro's job, even if it was a second stream or, you know, digitally or something like that. And so it would be having that person there, but then instead of me like jumping in and out, you know, kind of being the analyst role of the game. So you'd still have your play-by-play expertise to talk about what's happening, but then you would probably have more conversation driven to, wow, they've run high horns 4 times in a row and they've gotten 3 buckets. That would be a 185 O rating or whatever the number would be, and talk about the game a little more like that. And really it's, I think where broadcasting is going in general, and again, a much bigger conversation, is giving fans the type of information that they want to interact with. Some of it might be analytics, some of it might be X's and O's, some of it might be the player stories and their families and their impacts in the community. We do all of those things throughout the game, but you could envision a broadcast that did each of those kind of with a bigger focus. So thank you guys very much, and hope to see some folks tonight for Blazers Hawks.